Well, this news broke this afternoon. Celtics center Robert Williams is undergoing an arthroscopic procedure on his left knee. He is expected to need 4 to 6 weeks in order to recover. This, of course, was reported first by Sean Devaney of Heavy.com. Williams had a meniscus tear and surgery in March, though he did play through the playoffs. Williams will miss training camp, which starts next week, and he will likely miss the start of the regular season. Hello and welcome into Arbella Early Edition. I am Trenni Casey. I am joined by our own Chris Forbserg, Chris Mannix from SI as well. And guys, I have to be honest, when I first heard this news, my initial thought, which I'm assuming is the thought of a lot of people, was, well, why did you wait so long? Why did you wait till a week before training camp to have this procedure done on your knee? And then I was listening to the radio on the way in and heard one of our colleagues, Lou Merloni, talking about how, hey, this isn't always what it seems. A lot of times pro athletes who have an injury will work through something. They'll rest when the season ends, and then they'll slowly start to ramp up. And it's only when that ramp up happens that you realize, wow, this still doesn't quite feel right. So it's not that so much that Robert Williams put it off, but that this is just when it popped up. So I ask you, Chris Forbserg, does that sound like a plausible explanation, or does it sound more like a former pro athlete sticking up for a current pro athlete?
No, so 2 weeks ago, I think the Celtics posted a picture of Rob going up for a dunk on social media. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, that's a great sign. Like, Rob's feeling good. He's in his normal self. But what I think we know now is that, just like you said, it's not until you start ramping up and start testing that knee out that maybe you discover that it's not right. And look, I was as hopeful as everyone. Everyone knows my bias with Time Lord and how much I think of him. I think everyone hoped with 100 days of rest that this thing would be in a better place. But we could tell during the playoffs he wasn't himself. And maybe as they started to ramp up here in the pre-training camp era, it just wasn't ready. And they needed to get back in there and clean something up. And like, that's just part of what you go through when you rush yourself back. And so, like, I'm sure there's going to be criticism and, oh, look, he's always hurt. And look, I've heard it all. But this is what it is. If you're going to give up your body to be out there in the NBA Finals, then this might just be the sacrifice. And I hope that the Celtics are slow and diligent in bringing him back from this, because he means a lot more in May and June than he does in October and November.
Yeah, Mannix, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
You know, I checked in with a few people within the organization. That's basically a lot of what I heard was that Robert Williams, in the aftermath of the finals, took a lot of time off, really needed to rest that left knee after effectively being day-to-day for the better part of 2 months. And when he did start to ramp it up again, this sort of persistent pain was occurring in the knee, and the Celtics decided, Robert Williams and his team decided, look, let's get it dealt with right away. Maybe we'll miss a week, maybe we'll miss 2 weeks in the regular season, but let's deal with this now before the games really count and be healthy for the duration of the season.
Yeah, Mannix, I'll be honest, that's once I sort of heard Lou talk and sort of started piecing everything together, that made the most sense, that explanation. But it also cropped up a whole new level of concern, right? Because here is something that Robert Williams did take a long time to rest, and yet it popped up again, and he has had an injury history. What is your concern level about this guy being able to stay healthy and be a consistent contributor to the Celtics?
Well, look, I think if you're going to put it on a 1 to 10 scale, I would say 5 or 6 right now. I mean, Robert Williams did need knee surgery towards the end of last season, but he came back a lot faster than anybody expected. And he has shown everybody in this last year that this man can play through pain, that he's willing to play hurt, and he'll do it whenever it's humanly possible. So it's troubling right now to see Robert Williams go down with this type of injury, but as long as he's back within that first week or two in November, this will be something I think we'll be looking past very quickly. Right now, all it really is a question about the Celtics, their bench. Do they have to bring somebody in to shore up that front court?
And I'll agree. I thought I was going to have to defend Time Lord here, but, you know, I think he played 61 of the first 75 games last year and then found a way to get back out there and gut through the playoffs. I think that deserves some credit. Again, I think he sacrificed a little bit to be out there last year, and so now you're paying the price a little bit this year. But they have to understand the Celtics ceiling is somewhat tied. It starts with Jalen and Jason, but when Rob is out there, he is a game changer, and he just changes the dynamic of this team. They need him healthy in June, in May, in July, whatever the case may be. And so if you have to bite the bullet right now to get him healthy, it's not the worst thing. I hope Luke Cornett is ready. I hope Fiondu Kabengele and all these other bigs that they brought into camp are ready to try and compete for spots and eat minutes while this is going on. My big fear is, Al Horford is 36. There's going to be back-to-backs that he can't play. How do the Celtics weather those games early? You don't want to dig yourself the hole that they dug last year and have to kind of claw your way out and run out of steam at the end. That's my bigger concern than necessarily just kind of weathering the first couple of weeks without Rob.
Yeah, because let's be honest, when Rob Williams was healthy and rested and on the floor, the Celtics were an entirely different, more potent team. And guys, for anybody who missed the top of the show, just your reactions to Robert Williams having to miss the next 4 to 6 weeks, Mannix. I think the bigger concern is, can he come back in 4 to 6 weeks? Is it even smart to do that? And when he does come back, how often is he able to be on the court?
Yeah, I think it's concerning, but at least it's happening right now when you have a good runway before you have to get Robert Williams back into game action. The most important thing is that when we get deep into the regular season, November, December, January, that Robert Williams and his knee issue are completely cleared up. You can't say you're not concerned at the moment, because this will be the second time this knee will have been operated on in a matter of months. But the fact that it's happening now in mid-September gives you some kind of hope that by the time the games really start to count, Robert Williams will be out there on the floor.
And my only concern, Trenni, is that the Celtics started slow last year. They had to dig themselves out of that hole. And by the time you got to the finals, you felt like maybe they didn't have a whole lot in the tank. And so I'm hopeful that if Rob is able to kind of get the surgery and get back on the court, it's not a huge time frame. I do think you see a move, the Athletic reporting that the Celtics will waive Bruno Caboclo. And so I wonder if there's another move coming here to add some more big man depth, or at least another body that can compete for space there in the training camp ramp up to the start of the regular season, because the Celtics will need everybody from Luke Cornett to Fiondu Kabengele and everyone else that they're bringing to camp to try to help them weather this storm, even if it's just a week or two. Because I know you say 4 to 6 weeks, but you got to be careful with Rob, and it's so imperative that he's upright in May and June. And so don't rush him back the way you did last season because you were in the middle of the playoffs.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you also have Gallinari, who is out. It's not like Al Horford is a spring chicken. He's not going to be able to play back-to-backs. He may need extended time off. He has had injury issues. So here are some notable free agent big men that the Celtics could consider signing. Dwight Howard, he's 36. It's not that old. Played just over 16 minutes per game last year for the Lakers. Lamarcus Aldridge, also 36, scored almost 13 points per game last season for the Nets. Hassan Whiteside is 33, a spring chicken there. Last year, he averaged over 8.7 boards per game for Utah. DeMarcus Cousins, the youngest on the list, 31 years old, and scored 9 points per game for the Nets. Forbserg, any of these names on this list make you go,
So Lamarcus Aldridge came up last year because of his relationship with Ime Udoka, dating back to San Antonio. I do wonder, you're not throwing a lot on his plate. He was able to come back last year and play for the Brooklyn Nets. Could he just be a stopgap at that 4-5 position, filling both minutes that you lose from Gallinari and from now Robert Williams? I don't love the idea of just splurging on a veteran, because the Celtics are already so far over the tax, and every dollar you spend is essentially $3.75 spent. But you know what? You're going to spend that regardless of who your 14th player is. So maybe it's better to have someone you trust and a veteran presence. And I'll be interested to see just how much that balance is weighed. Do the Celtics go and skew a little bit younger, someone who might be able to help them long term? Or do they just go get the player that Ime Udoka is most comfortable with and feels okay throwing out there at the start of the season?
Mannix, do they need to add somebody? And if yes, who?
Yeah, I think they need to add somebody. In fact, I thought they've needed to add somebody even before this injury to Robert Williams. I don't know anything about Luke Cornett. I don't know if he can play high-level NBA basketball, but even before this injury, he was going to be someone that was going to be in the mix with Danilo Gallinari being out for most, if not all, of this regular season. I like Dwight Howard in this mix a lot because even before the injury to Robert Williams, what were you looking at across the Eastern Conference landscape? You were looking at physical teams that were out there, like Milwaukee, like Philadelphia, like Miami. And if you're looking at one weakness in this Celtics front court, it's physicality. You've got a lot of good floor spacers like Al Horford and Grant Williams, guys that are strong, but not necessarily the brute force center types. Dwight Howard played about 16 minutes per game last year for the Lakers. He shot 66% from the free throw line. That's the second highest free throw percentage of his career. Before the injury to Robert Williams, I thought Dwight Howard would be a good fit. After the injury to Robert Williams, I think he's even better fit. He'd be the guy I'd aggressively pursue at this point.
Mannix, if they don't add anybody, how do you feel about this team 4 weeks out from the regular season and less than a week out from training camp?
I am wildly bullish on this team, Trenni. And you know me, Captain Optimism all the time. But I am bullish on this group. I've spent the last couple of weeks talking to members of the team for a story we're working on in Sports Illustrated. And everything I hear from people around the players to the players themselves, it is really, really good things that you want to hear. I was talking to Drew Hanlon, who's the trainer for Jason Tatum, said all summer long, Tatum's attitude has shifted entirely to just being focused on winning. Talking to Al Horford, he was telling me he's not just thinking about playing this year. His body feels so good, he feels he can play 2 or 3 more years and keep his career going to close to the age of 40. Even Robert Williams, before this latest injury issue, he was just telling me, like, look, these guys, they've been talking all summer about maintaining their edge, about getting off to a good start this season and picking up right where they left off. I think this team has the talent. I think this team has the depth. If there's one concern, it's that will these guys be willing to sacrifice? Malcolm Brogdon comes in. Will he be willing to sacrifice? Well, I talked to Horford, and Horford worked out with Brogdon this summer. He said the one thing Brogdon kept saying to him was that, what can I do to fit in? What can I do to help us win? So right now, all the signs are positive for the Celtics team.
I know.
And the one thing I would add, Trenni. No, I know. Like, look, I'm in likewise bullish on this team, and I do think that as devastating as it is for me personally to not be able to watch Rob Williams for the first 2 weeks of the season, that they can weather this storm. And I do think the front office, from everything I've heard, is quite bullish on Luke Cornett, on Fiondo Cavangeli being able to play some minutes in that front court. So again, if you can just weather it, I think we get so fixated on, oh my God, what's the depth in the front court? And certainly the nights that Al Horford has to sit out on back-to-backs, that's a concern. But there's so much talent everywhere else, and they're so deep at the guard position and at the wing that this team should be a juggernaut out of the gates. I think back to that 2009 team. 2008 wins the championship, and they come out and they go 27-2 to start. I don't know what the Celtics know. They can't start as slow as they did. And while this is a little bit of a setback, I think Jason and Jalen and Marcus and Al all know they have to be supremely motivated going into this year. And I think they'll find a way to weather this little storm.
All right, Mannix, Forbserg, I hope the next couple of days are quiet because things get going again on Monday. Thank you very much. Speaking of Monday, Celtics will hold their media day as we get closer to the new season. You can catch exclusive interviews with the players and coaches on all of the NBC Sports Boston and Boston Celtics digital platforms. Our coverage begins at noon.